Hello, everyone. It's July 6th, 2025. Here in Philadelphia, we might as well call it basketball day. You know, 7-6, 76ers. My name is Phil, and you're listening to The Lip. Yeah, that was a little corny, I'll have to admit. But I like making holidays out of weird days that come along. Of course, now that I'm actually doing this episode quite a few weeks in advance, like I said, it's basketball day here in Philadelphia, uh, July 6th. I can tell you that you're not going to be listening to this episode until July 26th, a whole just about 3 weeks away, 20 days. But I can certainly tell you that what you will be hearing as I'm speaking to you from the past, but not so distant past, my attempts to just talk. I know. I actually went and sort of pulled back the curtain several times and told you that my original intention, the spirit of just talking, was me just thinking about stuff that came up off the top of my head while I was just sitting in my office. But there were just so many things throughout the time that I saw that I just said, I got to put these somewhere. And thus, just talking, I guess it was episode 4 was the first one that I started realizing that I was gathering up all this stuff that I just needed to speak on. And, well, I had to write it down. So I actually have notes from episode 4 of Just Talking all the way up until the present because I seen these little things and I just need to write them down. And I did. Stockpiled them. Well, I get a chance to talk about that stuff only because I took the time to remember to write it all down. Had I not written it down, well, I'd have completely forgotten about it. And we would be missing all of that stuff that I wanted to talk about. But fortunately, like I said, when I was writing the initial concept of my 2002 2003 story, which literally was one page of notes, and then it just sort of spiraled into all the other things that were going on for the other 7 weeks that I did that story slash series of stories, which combined into one really big story. I was writing down all kinds of stuff, and well, some of the stuff I wrote down was for episode 18 and now 19 of Just Talking because there was just so much stuff that I saw. And now I've got it, and it's time to go ahead and actually get to talk about this stuff. Well, the rest of it anyway. I did half of it before. Now I have a half a sheet of notes here that I'm going to run through for this episode. To make a long story short, of course, it's too late. I believe it's time to fill in the blanks. Now, the blank that I would fill for this episode would be the fact that I typically always like to have something to drink when I'm recording episodes. Now, the question would have to be, what am I drinking usually as I record each episode? The blank can only be filled in today because there are several answers, because there's several different things that I've drank while recording episodes. So, to fill in the blank today, July 6th, 2025, for episode of Just Talking, which happens to be number 218. 19 of the whip. I am literally about to crack open a Blackberry Dr. Pepper, which I have become way too attached to, if I must say so myself. Don't know if you heard that, but you're going to hear me drinking a little bit right now. Blackberry Dr. Pepper. The breakfast, the lunch, and the dinner of champions. I'll have to admit, that's the fill in the blank for today. However, other times it could be regular Dr. Pepper because I have a very finite and limited amount. It could potentially be cherry Dr. Pepper, but I have that stuff stowed away in a secret spot, the last container, but we'll talk about that later. Mountain Dew is always a contender, especially Code Red or the original. Love those two. Don't get me wrong, I'm very high on Baja Blast and some of the other exclusive flavors, but tonight I'm drinking Blackberry Dr. Pepper. It's great stuff if you hadn't had it. And on that note, it is time for me to ring the bell and begin the main event. Just Talking, number 19. Where do we begin on these notes? I'm looking. Well, I think I have to start here. It's a very strange place to start, and well, I think it's a good place to start for now. It's a question, not even just me just talking. It's a question. Do you always fill your gas tank up completely when it gets empty? Or if it's half empty, whatever it is, no matter where your gas gauge reads, do you fill your gas tank completely up? My answer is not all the time. I'll be honest, I don't fill my gas tank up all the time. And I have a variety of reasons why I don't. It's a whole grocery list of reasons why I don't always go to the gas tank and put the nozzle in and let it fill all the way up to the top. Of course, the average reason is sometimes just don't have all the money that would require to fill the gas tank. That's a basic and legitimate one that most people would have. It's, well, I just don't have enough money to fill it up, especially the way gas prices are right now. I mean, good Lord. Back in the day, as I like to call it, my young dumb days when I was driving my monster V8s. I'm not talking about the Avalanche, which I loved that 5.3 in the Avalanche V8. It was great. It was a lot of fun. But I'm talking about the real scary cars. When I had my Z28, 1985 Z28 Camaro with a 5-speed manual transmission, 4-barrel carburetor, I wouldn't put anything in that car except premium. And then I would add stuff to the gas to raise the octane even a little higher. Because that was a machine that required nice high octane. And to describe it as fast would be an understatement. I also had my race car, essentially. Used as daily driver, but again, in the young dumb days, we're talking early 20s, like really, really early 20s, like 21, 20, 19, and not even 20. I had a Z28. No, that was a way to describe that one. The other one was the 87 Luxury Sport Monte Carlo with a few little extras to it. It wasn't your basic luxury sport because a lot of those you would find with the 305, which was a nice Chevy engine. Mine had a 350 in it. It also had a four-barrel carburetor, much like the Camaro. I believe before I purchased the vehicle, the individuals did a little engine swap, made it a little faster than it needed to be. And let me tell you, for someone who, as Sean Ben stated in National Treasury, engaged in operations of questionable legality when it came to that car, I will say that I was 55-1. Only car I lost to was a vehicle that had nitrous. Only when I was stupid enough to race that had nitrous. But that's not what we're talking about. That would be a story for a different day. Where I was at is the fact that I would only put premium and only I would actually put octane boosters in to make the gas even more potent than it already was. Now, premium gas now is $4 and change, and I put it in every one of those Monster 8s that I have. Now, my little four banger that I love so much, my Trax, and every car I've had since, well, I guess 2007. The only kind of gas I put in my cars has been regular. And the reason mostly is because the gas was so expensive. Hi, Phoenix. My pal decided to talk to me. He's here. Yeah, I only put regular in now. But the whole point is, that was the gas price. Because when I was putting premium in the Camaro and the Monte Carlo, it was like $1.05. Regular was like 87 cents. But premium was $1.05. And it cost me about $20 to fill the giant monster tank that would just drink every single drop as I was blowing down the road doing 100 miles an hour. I probably could say that because it's safe to say that the statute of limitations for speeding like that, for me, are well up. And so I didn't mind putting that heavy duty gas in and putting a lot in. But over time, it determined that it seemed like when I would fill it up, everything would be fine. And then a lot of times when many of the different vehicles that I've had were just about to betray me, had some sort of awful thing, usually caused by myself. Car accident, letting it get overheated and blowing the engine. The number one thing that would end up happening is I would just fill the tank with gas. And at that moment, that's when the engine problem or transmission problem would happen in a vehicle that I own. And typically at that point in time, it wasn't worth fixing. And I just essentially gave away a free tank of gas. Never really liked to do that. And then, of course, as a mechanic, years and years later, I discovered that I had the same issue because it just seemed like it happened again. I would only put half a tank in. If I had half a tank, I would get gas. I maybe put a little bit in just to make it fit the three quarters. But I never would fill it all the way up. And it seemed like the slightly, I want to call it almost lucky socks. When I was a kid throwing shot put and discus, I had a really good run. And I never wore different socks. Always wore the same socks every meet. Wrestling, I always wrestled in the same socks every match. I never let it get past three quarters. And it seemed like I never had really any issues with the cars. But it turned out the time that I decided to fill up certain vehicles, the Avalanche of all things, it had a 22-gallon tank, lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of gas. And the one problem that you have sometimes with Chevy vehicles, particularly the trucks between 2000 and 2010-ish, and I would consider all of them because I haven't seen any natural fixes for that other than it's just what it is. But around that 120, 125,000 mile range with a Chevy truck, you got to replace the fuel filter. It's time to go. You got to get rid of it. It's going to die on you. It's just what they do. Once you get to around 120 to 125, anywhere past 100, you're kind of on borrowed time. It's just a matter of time for that the fuel pump to die on it. And of course, the fuel pump in my Avalanche, of course, it died on me when I just put the whole 22 gallons of gas in it. At the high prices that we had uh, 8 years ago now, at this point, 9 years ago, it's a lot of gas. And I had a friend of mine, because I was no longer working in the shops at the time, and so a friend of mine had to do it, and I was super apologetic because now he's got to balance that thing as he's dropping the gas tank in order to get to the fuel pump, and I know what a pain in the butt it was for him to do it, and I was all super apologetic, and that's one of the other reasons why I just don't like filling up the tank, because it just seems like if you do need to get to replace your fuel pump, it's going to be heavier and more of a pain for the person who's got to work on it. But on that same note, like every piece of machinery on a car, every single moving part usually needs one of two things. It either needs lubrication or it needs cooling. The engine, for example, needs both. Coolant runs through the block to try to dissipate the heat, and obviously the oil so that the pistons and shaft and all the other good stuff that's inside there can move freely and smoothly. Of course, the fuel pump inside your gas tank requires cooling. Most people don't realize it or even think about it, but if you let your vehicle run too long with the amount of gas being low, the fuel pump doesn't get cooled as much as it should be. It needs the gas to actually cool the fuel pump. It's a weird thought process, but yeah, it helps. So if you really want to burn out your fuel tank, rather your fuel pump, go ahead, be stupid like me sometimes, and just ride your car all the way down to the last drop every single time. Because you're letting that excess heat go to the fuel pump, making it work harder, and eventually it's going to die sooner. So you really shouldn't. But personally, like I said, between those lucky sock thought process and the fact that the gas is way higher than it is, a lot of times I just simply don't fill up my tank all the way up when I go get gas all the time. Sometimes I do. Every once in a while, I'll fill it all the way up. If it's really, really low or it's close to the top, I might fill it up if I'm thinking about it. But generally, I probably don't put more than half a tank of gas in my car at a time. I just don't. Now, speaking of a weird thing that I saw somebody do, probably middle of the school year for the kids. It was, I guess it was, should I say it was December or January? Definitely by February. Yeah, definitely by February. I want to say it might have been December or January. I took the kids to school every day the same way, all the time. And it turns out that they were working on the road that they turned down in order to get to their school. And I personally prefer to keep all of my teeth in my head. And I chose to really think about how I can get to their school without having to go on that same road and hitting every single bit of the chewed up road that they had because they were about to repave it. So I explored my options until I found a way that wouldn't have me hit at the most amount of the bad road when they were fixing it. And upon doing that, I happened to look to my right at this point in time because I was going to that school first time I saw this. And there was a curb that was by a funeral home, and it caught my attention. It made me go, wow, what in the world is going on here? This curb was broken, and you see broken curbs all the time. But this one, you would think that there was a uh, one of the plates in the earth had shifted and shot this piece of curb up. It was probably, if I look at it on retrospect, I'm guessing, not that I had the survey equipment or protractor at the moment, but I would say that the curb had buckled up somewhere in the neighborhood of about 2 feet, easy. Mm-hmm. 2 feet, 30 inches. And it was probably on somewhere around 45 to 50-degree angle. So this is a piece of curb that was triangularly facing upward. It looked like a mountain, but it was a very small mountain. And I didn't pay any attention to it. I just thought to myself, that's pretty bad. A couple weeks go by, and I'm still looking at it on the other side of the street as I'm going away from the school. And now that I'm on the other side and this broken curb is on my left, I'm starting to think that, wow, this is really, really bad. It's a lot worse than it looked. You can see that not only was that 45-degree angle upward, maybe, and it was pointing up on an angle, but there was a lower spot underneath it. So it wasn't like it was just one big piece. It was almost, if I could describe it as like a ledge. It was weird. I can't even, if you were to draw a line and go to the ground or the curb and it would be up, you would draw another line just underneath and there would be maybe a hanging piece of that curb, maybe about 4 inches, 5 inches. It was up above another broken part, which completed the actual damage of the sidewalk. And I was like, man, this is really kind of crazy at this funeral home. And it was the driveway. I'm like, this is really kind of bad. And now this is, like I said, maybe a month after I saw the initial damage, and now I'm looking at it on the other side. It looks even worse from the other side. Or I should say, I can actually see how bad it really was from the other side of the street. And again, I don't pay any mind to this. And this is March now. I'm going back and forth to school. April passes, and I just every once in a while just keep looking over at that broken curb, and it just makes me go, hmm. And eventually, my mind wanders, and it goes to a point where it's like, hey, would be something if somebody was stupid enough to try to get on that parking lot, that driveway. It looks clean as anything to get over that hump. And the way that that nightmarish break was, you could probably get your car up it. But I was looking at it, I'm like, man, it just doesn't look right if you're trying to get down. It just looks like there could be an issue. And this is in April. And I'm like, I don't know. Nobody's going to be stupid enough to worry about it. But of course, this is a Just Talking episode. And it's a Just Talking episode that I had time to pay attention to. Here it comes. I actually wrote down the day. Now, April's passed and May is here, and it's not just any specific day of May, it is a very specific day. It's May 16th, 2025. Driving the kids home, and the spot where that funeral home is, there's a light not too far away. And as I'm coming down, I look to my left because I'm going away from school now. And it happened. There was an orange Dodge Charger with a guy inside of it stuck on that 2 foot, 30-inch hook or broken curb that sort of looked like a weird mountain sort of deal. And here he is sitting on this thing, trying to get his car off. Now, I'm looking at him, and he's flooring it. Absolutely pedal to the metal, and he's facing the street. But his car is not going anywhere because the Charger is way too low, and the damaged part of the sidewalk is literally lifting his car up so that, very literally, his front two tires are not touching the ground. His back two tires are on the actual broken part of the curb, so his car is up on an angle, that 45-degree angle or so. Maybe it's a little more, less 30. Let's call it 30 because definitely wasn't 90. It was about 30 to 40 degrees. It was to a point where there is literally no chance that he's going to be able to hit the gas while he's in that car and get it to go over because the front tires are not touching the ground. The back tires are, the front not hitting the ground at all. And some would think, oh, maybe he could have just angled the front tires down a little bit and he'd be able to move. No, wasn't going to work because he was a literal teeter-totter. The only way that he was going to have any success would have been to have help because the angle of the car, he actually got out and he thought maybe he could push it. Now, there were so many things wrong with that. First of all, he had to get out and try to push it himself, but the biggest problem with trying to push it was that it was on that angle. So he wouldn't have the luxury of trying to push the car down. Like, say, if you're just pushing a car, people have done it 1,000 times, put it in neutral and just give it a shove, and somebody just sort of hits the steering wheel or somebody's inside. Not a big deal. Or even if you're going uphill, people can push that thing up and it'll go straight up the hill. Or if you're going downhill, you got to be more careful. You definitely have to have somebody in the car if you're going to let it go a little bit downhill and let gravity take over from that point. But the way he was positioned, he would have to push it uphill. But there was nothing to grab on because those front two tires were not touching the ground. And we're talking they were off the ground by maybe 6-7 inches. It was a significant amount. Now, just looking at the situation from the side of the road, well, not outside the road, on the street, I knew the only thing that this guy would be able to do in order to get his car off of this horrible position is he would need somebody inside the car. Somebody would then have to push the vehicle up that little bit of a stretch until the back tires were at the very peak, and hopefully that would be enough to make the teeter-totter swing down. And then the front two tires would then hit the ground. And from that point, give it a little bit of a push and it would go out. But the problem is, it would be in the street. And you'd have to hit the brakes as soon as the thing hit the ground and hope that there was nobody going across at the street, or else they're going to smash into you in the front end. And there's literally nothing you could have done about it because the back tires would have been in the air and on the way to the ground. And I'm looking at this situation like, wow, that is probably one of the worst situations I've seen in a long time for a car to sort of just hang like that. It was just terrible. And I mean, I don't understand what you could do with a situation. Like, whose responsibility is that? Like, the the guy got his car off of there somehow, and the only way he could have is at least two more people had to come and help him, the minimum, because in order to push the car up and then make sure that it didn't go out into the street. And when he was doing this operation, of course, it was at the end of the school day, so there was kids trying to get by and people picking up kids. So it was just really bad situation. And all I could say is, I'm not gonna lie, I'm glad it wasn't me. I'm sorry, I can't put it any other way because that guy was in a bad way, and I don't even want to know how he got off of there. But I know for him, if he couldn't get a couple of guys to help him, it's going to require a tow truck. But that might have been the safest bet. A tow truck going to scrape up the entire underbody, undercarriage of your car. You only hope that you don't snag any of the exhaust pipes as you're going down. But for safety purposes, at least a tow truck has lights, and you can easily stop the traffic a little bit, and you'd be able to get it off of there. So maybe that might have been his best bet. Hmm. But that was, like I said, I don't know whose fault that is. Is it the fault of the funeral parlor, or is it the fault of the city because of that terrible positioning? I mean, that's just, I just wouldn't want to have to, I wouldn't want to have to know who was responsible for that. And of course, last time I went by there, there was literally no, they didn't fix it. They did not fix it at all. Let's see. Here's a fun one. Uh, well, that's one thing. It's a little boring. I might worry about that one in a minute if I even talk about it. But this one is interesting. I'm the kind of person who likes to name things, and I think that certain things require names. It just makes that thing or that place more special. And I can certainly tell you that my two of my favorite cars, I called by a specific name. Now that 87 Luxury Sport Monte Carlo, if you've never seen a Luxury Sport Monte Carlo, I wholeheartedly think you should look it up. They have a different face than any other 80 Monte Carlos that people have seen. They're cool. I like them. And personally, I liked it a lot better than the regular ones, the Super Sports. You really need to look it up if you haven't seen one. But my 87 Monte Carlo was black, and I painted the grill purple, and I had lightning bolts behind the back windows, those signature back windows. And I gave it the name the Storm Cloud. Reason being, one day I was driving to my aunt's house, and there was like a tremendous downpour, like lightning, thunder. It was unbelievable. And it had not too long after I just got the car. And it rained so hard that the wiper blades actually stopped working. It was just that much rain. I completely couldn't see anything. And on this road that I was driving on, it was heavily deer populated. And even with my high beams on, which of course I learned later that realistically the high beams just kind of create a mirror effect in that kind of rain. You can't even see, you see even less. Totally blind. And I'm like, all right, well, just, I have no way. I couldn't even see where to stop because there was nothing but wooded area. And if I tried to stop and pull over, there's a likelihood that I would hit a tree at that point because there were so many trees in that area where I was going. So I had option A, uh, attempt to pull over and hit a tree, which would have happened, or option B, um, stop the car right in the middle of the road. But of course, fortunately, there wasn't anybody really coming. Then I said, okay, we're going to use option C. I'm going to just trust this car. And I just did the dumbest thing you could do. Of course, like I said, when I had that Monte Carlo young dumb days, I put it in cruise control. Stupidest thing you would think. On that day, that car just maintained itself. I didn't touch anything really. I couldn't see. And then I got out of the super heavy rain, took it off of cruise control, and kept going. And I thought to myself, boy, the only thing that could have possibly gotten through rain like that is a cloud itself. Thus, storm cloud. Another vehicle that I named was the 85 Camaro Z28. That monster was even more powerful than the storm cloud because one of the things that my uncle who gave it to me did before he gave it to me, he said, I need to get you the exhaust fixed. And he had the exhaust fixed. And it probably gained about 25 horsepower. All of a sudden, I realized that at that moment, this is the strongest car I've ever had. But there are some stronger. And I thought of the coolest possible thing. This is not just an angel. This is one of the most powerful angels you can be. This is an archangel. And thus, I named the Camaro the Archangel. On that note of naming things, for years I've been wanting to name my office. Put it in there and paint a little logo in there somewhere. And I think it took me forever to figure out what to name it. Until, yes, it was sometime around March, I named it. But I haven't made any official tweaks to it in order so that it takes its true name. Because out of my office, I have my one wall covered in Jedi, the other wall covered in the Sith. I have my money in the bank briefcase hanging up, and of my current, as you're listening to this show now, as I'm recording this show, my 1012 cereal boxes, and I don't know how many paintings are out there. The only thing that comes to mind when I think of all those hobby type things and collectibles and then the paintings, I would have liked to have gone up with some cool name like, I don't know, the Batcave or the Lair of the Fox. But those are taken. And then it dawned on me. This is my museum. Thus, my office will be known as the museum. I have art. I have lots of collectible things. And I think about it all the time. If I could have some of my stuff, particularly the cereal boxes, I could easily make that as a display for a museum. There's 1,000 and change of these things, 1,012. I could make a very large exhibit. My paintings, I've got to have nearly 100 of them. I haven't counted them in a while. Between the interior of the house and my office itself, which I don't have any hanging in my office, but they're all in my cabinet. But I wouldn't be able to hang all of those out there or in my house. So if I were, it would literally look like, once again, it would look like a museum, without a doubt. And I do believe that that is and will be the name that I have chosen for my office, the museum. It's as good as it gets. Let's see. Okay. Now, this one is for all my Philadelphia people out there. And it's a very important one to me because as an original Jersey guy, I was totally confused the first time I heard of this. Like, completely confused, no idea what was being said. I thought maybe I was on another planet for a minute. I didn't know or understand what was happening. And then, of course, years later, after being around Philadelphia, I then was listening to New Jersey 101.5, strongest New Jersey radio station. In fact, as far as I know, as far as listening to radio, this has got to be the strongest radio station I've ever heard of because it goes up and down all New Jersey. Then, when driving to the Poconos, all the way up in the mountains here in Pennsylvania, the strength of that radio station still reached out that far. Now, to give you an understanding of just how weird that is, because people sometimes hear the radio station click away and it's gone when you go far off. And I know that nowadays everybody's streaming or listening to some sort of satellite radio or YouTube whenever they're going out. So I'll give you a quick uh, taste of what's going on when it comes to radio signals. The initial ones that, as a radio major, at what I would consider just about the end of terrestrial radio when I was going to school in 1999 and 2000 as a radio major, I was taught that the AM radio, which is pretty much the weakest ones that we have now, have a frequency that the radio waves go straight ahead. They actually just move straight. And if there's, say, a tall enough building or a mountain, the radio wave will hit that and it won't go any further, which is what limits AM to its strength. Now, the FM radio wave kind of does what a wave does. It actually goes up and down. So it can clear over buildings, and that signal can clear over mountains, and it can spread out a lot farther because of that. And while I was listening to the radio, somebody was from Philadelphia on that 101.5 because they asked a very specific question, and that question was answered by someone from Philadelphia, and I heard what they said. The radio hosts were confused and were like, that can't be a real thing. I don't know what you're talking about. That's nuts. And of course, I'm sitting in the car like, Dude's telling you the truth. It's absolutely a real thing. And what were they talking about? What was this strange thing that confused the radio hosts that I was confused by when I got to Philadelphia for the first time? It's a singular word. One word that is just still to this day, whenever I see it on a billboard of all things, I'm still like, I can't believe this is real. It's just strange, but it's totally Philadelphia. The word Jawn. John. John. Like the radio hosts heard this guy. The question that they asked is, what's a word that you are a little bit that's strange from you're not really sure about? And the guy talked about it, and he gave a definition, and I was like, yeah, that's what I understand. And the radio host was like, that's not a real thing. There's just no way. And I'm like, yeah, it's real. It's real. It really is. The fact that John can mean anything. And I heard that, and they were clueless. They had no idea what it was, and I was like literally beeping my horn and sticking my hand out the window, screaming, "It's real! John is real! It's a Philadelphia thing, but it's real." Now, the first time I heard it was in 2007, and I was completely confused. Somebody was like, "Oh, you want that, John?" When I was in the store visiting my wife at the time, future wife, I would say. Yeah, that's the word, future wife. And a guy said, "You want one of those, Johns?" And I looked at him, and I was completely confused. I had no idea what he was talking about when he said, "Would you like one of those, Johns?" And I wasn't even playing it cool. I was just sort of, let me think of a good enough word to describe how I felt when he said that. I got one. I was bewildered when he said the word John because I was like, what's a John? What is that? I've never heard of a John. I just got a soda in my hand here. I would like to pay for this soda. And I didn't say it because I was still trying to process it. And then he goes, let me take the John. Let me just scan it for you. And then I realized that he was talking about the soda, and I was even more confused. I looked at it after he scanned it and asked me for the money, and I was like, John? I know I've heard of soda pop. People will call it pop. And I was like, John? It's John. Call soda John here? Okay, I guess. And then I took the John and I left. I was really confused. My wife was like, are you okay? And I'm like, just was weird because he called the soda John. I didn't know he called it John. And then I got, as they say in the wrestling world, I got smartened up. That's when I discovered that John is a word that means anything. Like, it can be used in place of anything. Would you like another John? I just said, would you like another soda? I think I would. I don't know if you heard that John just calling me right there. That was Phoenix, the cat. Phoenix was then the John at the moment. When I'm done with this episode, I'm going to turn the John off and go to bed. I'm going to turn off the phone that I'm recording with. That's the John at the point, the John. And I've heard many people talk about people, places, and things, nouns. That's pretty much what I've discovered a John is. They say it means anything. Now, if it truly meant anything, I don't know if I'm taking this too seriously, but if John meant anything, I could say, before I go lift weights, I'm going to go jawning. I'm going to go running. No, you don't use John like that. It's like, go John the ball. Throw the ball. Nah, it doesn't work like that. It's purely a noun, from what I can tell. But it means any type of noun, an object, an idea, a place, a person. I'm going to go to the John. I'm going to go to the store, go to the gas station. Those are Johns. And in my mind, like I said, I am not a English major, but it just appears to me as if John specifically is it means noun things, person, place, thing, idea. Not verbs, not verb. Johns are not verbs. You can't say John over that hurdle. Jump over the hurdle. That's not a thing. Um, go in the pool and John. Go in the pool and swim. Nah, not an action word. It's not a verb. So technically, the definition of John to me, which scratches my head, it means everything or anything, or it can be anything. Then why can't it be a verb as well as a noun? I've never heard anybody use it like that here in Philadelphia. It's just it does, so technically it doesn't mean to me. I might get some flack from the Philly folks, but that doesn't mean everything. Then if it's only a noun but not a verb, it's not everything. Now I've got a word that means absolutely everything, and that is Smurf. Smurf means everything. Smurf can be a noun or a verb. That's Smurfy. That's good. I'm going to Smurf you. I'm going to hit you. And it's like we're gonna. In fact, I think Smurf is quite the opposite. Maybe that's the deal because things are Smurfy. Things can be Smurfed. We can do things. I think that maybe Smurf is only a vowel, but it's not a noun. So if you want to have everything be everything, you might have to be from Philadelphia and a strong Smurf fan, because then you could say something like, that John over there is smurfing to the John. In other words, that girl over there is running to the store. Does that make sense? In some weird way, I think it kind of does. Or I could say, um, let's see, that's a very smurfy John. I hope that they don't smurf too much before they get into the John. I'm saying that's a drunk person, and I hope they didn't drink too much before they get in the car. Making sense? I think it just seems like we would all be doing ourselves a bigger favor if we just simply said, I am Groot. I think I am Groot would certainly be a better way to say anything than John or Smurf, because that one statement means literally because it's an entire language. Am I thinking about this too far? Probably. Most certainly I am. The fact that I could sit here and justify the word John and Smurf and then I am Groot all into one thing, because at the same time you could say something like, that John, I am Groot. Smurf, that John, I am Groot. But I says, that guy who walked over to the gas station and pumped his gas, paid with a credit card. You getting all that? Okay. I think that I think I did enough damage for just talking number 19, and I'm about to ring that John and end this I am Groot. Oh man, I had a lot of fun with that one, especially at the end. Um, Let me tell you, the painting that you're looking at in front right now is this. Which one is it? It's actually one of the series that I just created here in 2025, and it is part of the second series that I created in 2025. This one is the third of three of what I'm calling the wrestling series. Now, last week I had Pile Driver, which was the first of the wrestling series. I kind of skipped the second one, but it'll be for next show. But Suplex here is the third of the three paintings that I'm making for the wrestling series. I think that not just any suplex, but the German suplex, which has vastly become popular in professional wrestling over the last 20 years, especially. But this is a move that is definitely something that you could see featured very prominently in freestyle and Greco Roman wrestling at the college and the Olympic levels as well. It's a really nasty move. And if you do it wrong in the pros, you're probably going to kill somebody. And if you do it right in Greco Roman and or freestyle, you have a good chance of killing somebody. It's a nasty, nasty move. But it's truly a staple in all wrestling. And I thought it made a perfect sense to make it as part of my art. As such a wrestling fan, I don't know what took me so long to create this as a series. But as they say, better late than never. But I went there before I went to um, the Spear of the Week. Now, it's July 6th, 2025, and you're going to be listening to this, if you listen to it the day it releases, on July 26th, 2025. The city of Philadelphia is having a union strike, and the biggest group that is causing the most problems because they're on strike are the garbage men. Now, it's safe to say that the mayor came up with a contingency plan. And what she wanted to do was put 63 different sites around the city where people could take their garbage on their designated garbage day. Now, the designated spot by my house, of course, is relatively close, and nobody really is going to just take their garbage on garbage day because they don't want it to pile up at their house. So what they do is everybody takes their garbage whenever they fill up enough of it, and they take it to what I'm calling Garbage Island. It's a nice little spot that is sort of a little island in between two different streets, and they put two dumpsters, and they made it three dumpsters, and there's easily 5 foot high, 6 foot high piles of garbage all around it. It's a work of art. It really is. But now, the spear of the week, where is that coming from? That, of course, by now, hopefully, when this airs, the garbage men are off strike. But truthfully, if they're not, the garbage island is going to get worse all around the city. And I think that the person who is the spear of the week, and it's impossible to pinpoint who that is because Garbage Island is a nice spot. I don't know. I've seen some places in this city where the dumpsters are. They're in a really bad place, and the garbage is really, really bad. At least in Garbage Island that we have, it's in a nice centralized spot, and it's not as bad as some of the other places around the city. However, somebody decided to make a secondary Garbage Island, maybe a block and a half away from where the official Garbage Island is. So they've now created a pile of garbage which is now pushing into the street. And this pile of garbage is, like I said, it's maybe a block and a half, maybe 2 blocks away from Garbage Island. But it's right in the general area. It's just, you could see it. So the person who put the first bag in that secondary Garbage Island, which is now wading out to the street, that person is the spear of the week. Because all the garbage that they piled up in that area there could easily have fit over on Garbage Island. And it wouldn't be spilling out into the street. It's ridiculous. The person who put that first bag in that secondary Garbage Island, you're the spear of the week. Let's go to the magic book with the questions. Let's see. I know last episode when I really didn't have any formal direction of where I wanted to go, I simply answered a few questions because they just kept, I found a good page and had a nice section of questions. But here comes a spot that I have not explored yet. Let's see. Hmm. Hmm. Here comes. Who do you think, in general, is smarter, men or women? Well, this one is not very complicated. It's actually very, very simple. How is it very, very simple? I'm going to get to the answer in a very roundabout way. Women are very, very critical thinkers, whereas most guys really aren't. But having said that, some of the people with the highest of IQs and have some of the smartest men in the world, well, as far as people in the world, have been men as far as IQ levels. And there are very, very highly intelligent women out there as well. But most of the time, you would say that the smartest person in the world has generally been a man. However, however, just because one man may have been the smartest person in the world, if you take it into consideration that there are more women than there are men, and I would certainly say that the exception rather than the rule would be that there are smarter men than there are women. I think that's definitely the exception. I think there's more smart women than there are smart men. And I would definitely say there are more dumb men than there are dumb women. So, by default, if you think that there's less smarter men than there are smart women, and if you think that there are more dumb men than there are dumb women, essentially you look at it from that particular lens. There's a lot of smart men, a lot of smart women, a lot of dumb women, a lot of dumb men. But there's more dumb men than there are dumb women, and there's more smart women in general than there are smart men. Not to say that the smarter women are not as smart as the smartest man, and not to say that the dumbest woman isn't dumber than the dumbest man, but if you look at the top of each one and you measure it on a curve, I think it's real safe to say that in general, for the most part, women win, that they're smarter because, like I said, the curve of how many smart women there are versus how many dumb women there are is definitely higher than the curve of how many smart men there are to how many dumb men there are. That curve's a little lower. I think the idiots on the bottom certainly pull us guys down, whereas the really smart women definitely push up all the other ones who may not be as smart. So I would have to say that the women are definitely smarter than the men. Now, it's time to shut things down by saying one of the smartest things I could tell you to do is, whether you're a man or a woman, join the LIP Facebook group. Join us. There's always room for one more. Equally as important and equally as valuable, I need you to subscribe to this channel at Phil the Lip, where you will get all of our shows that are here since I've been on YouTube, and check out the Spotify. It's still out there and it's got the archives, the beginning of the show. For no other reason, you can see how the humble beginnings came up and how much better it's become throughout the last 4 years. I think that'd be a fun journey to go on. You can check me out on Instagram, Philip Henderson 5102. I'm out there on Twitter and X, but I can certainly tell you that definitely subscribe to the channel. Please do so. I'm looking forward to everybody who's listening to throw a subscribe on there. Getting late and I ran out of Blackberry Dr. Pepper. So now it is time to give you the words of wisdom. Well, here's a fun one. These are words of wisdom that everybody should definitely pay attention to because they're very, very true. Don't miss this. I'm throwing it at you, and I need you to catch it. The most consistent thing that most people consistently do is be inconsistent. One more time. The most consistent thing that most people consistently do is be inconsistent. Think about that. If we can get past being inconsistent on a consistent basis, we will actually be getting better at what we try to do. Remember that. Consistently being inconsistent is not good. We need to try to change that. And on that note, my name is Phil, and you've just listened to The Lip.